Welcome to AGA's main event featuring our honored guest speaker, Dr. Amy Baker.
So this morning I talked about what I call PAS primer. All right, what's the difference between alienation and estrangement, and what are the 8 behaviors of alienated children, and what are the 17 primary parental alienation strategies, 10 reasons why the court should intervene. And if anybody is interested in those slides, you can just email me, because that's not what I'm talking about now. All right. So here's some facts that Carol shared with me. First is that 70 million grandparents, I mean, there are 70 million grandparents in the United States. You are part of a huge cohort, right? So there are powers in numbers, and it means that if you're having problems with something, it's going to be a lot of people affected by those problems, and that means that people should be paying attention, and that's partly why I'm here today. Another piece of data that I extracted from something that Carol shared with me was 72% of grandparents report that being a grandparent is the single most important and satisfying thing in their lives. And maybe there's some hyperbole in there, I don't know. You could shift the numbers a little bit, but I think the basic message is that it's really important and satisfying to be a grandparent. And so to have that taken away from you really is painful. So I get that. So access to grandchildren is controlled through the middle generation, right? So you've got a grandparent, and then there's the middle generation, and then there's a gate. And if you can walk through that gate, you get to have a relationship with your grandchildren. It's not guaranteed. Now, I don't know the state laws in Florida about grandparent rights, but I know that's a kind of cutting-edge field, but in many states, grandparents don't have any legal rights. You have to go through that gate to get to your grandchildren. And that's unlike having a child yourself, unless you're a targeted parent, and then the gate is the other parent. Okay. Does that look familiar? Is that like your experience, that there's this horrible gate and it's closed, and it's lonely and scary, or depressing, foreboding? All right, so that's the closed gate, right? That's the gate that your grandchildren are on the other side, and you're on this side. Very hard to see how you're going to get through that. And hopefully today, my goal is to give you some ideas about how to maybe crack open that gate. Okay? I don't have a magic wand. If I did, I'd give it to you. But I have ideas. Okay. So the first thing that I started thinking about was, what are all the ways in which that gate gets closed? And so I identified 5. And there might be more, and I guess I'm curious if I missed something. Feel free to shout it out. But the first is sort of the intergenerational transmission of alienation proper, meaning you're the parent and you have a kid and you're alienated. Let me make sure I'm going in the proper order. Okay, you have a relationship with your children, but they're the targeted parent. So you have a son or daughter who's married to somebody who's preventing him or her from having access to his kids, and then you're sort of suffering by proxy. So you're sort of alienated by proxy. Does that make sense? Your child is the alienated child, and therefore they're the targeted parent, and therefore they don't have a relationship with their kids, so you don't get to have a relationship either. Okay, so it seemed to me when I was thinking about that scenario, that one of the most painful things would be that you as a parent has to bear witness to your own child being a targeted parent. And you have to live through their pain and suffering in their frustration and having their parenting denied. And then in addition, your role as a grandparent is going to be a very painful, frustrating role. So there's sort of 2 elements to that, right? The first is my child who's grown up and who I love is now a targeted parent and is denied access to his or her children. And then on top of that, it's therefore I don't get to see my grandchildren. And so I really see this scenario is different than all of the others. Okay, and I'm going to get back to that. So scenario B is the grandparent doesn't have a relationship with the middle generation, but the middle generation has a relationship relationship with his or her own children. That make sense? Anybody stop me if I'm not making sense? So there, the pain and suffering is from being a targeted parent yourself, and then you're frustrated in your role as a parent and grandparent. So that's different. So A and B are very different. What they share is the gate is closed to the grandkids, but the pathway or the reason that gate is closed is very, very different. And what you share is the frustration in the role of a grandparent, but in one, you're the parent of a targeted parent, and the other, you're the parent of an alienated child. Too complicated? Scenario C, which I hear is quite popular, is, well, this is the deceased version, but the son-in-law or daughter-in-law is playing the role of the gatekeeper, right? So this happens when you're the grandparent and your adult child has passed away. They can't be a gatekeeper anymore. The gatekeeper role switches over to the son-in-law or daughter-in-law, and they're not allowing access. And there, the source of grief is the loss of your own child, plus you're frustrated in the role as parent and grandparent. Scenario D, the middle generation is estranged. So this is where you don't have a relationship with your child, but it's not because of alienation. If you were, for whatever reason, challenged in your parenting role to an extent where your adult child does not want to have a relationship with you, but it's not because they've been manipulated to reject you, it's something inherent in your relationship with your own child, then your middle generation is going to be a gatekeeper. Okay, and then finally, this is the one I said I hear is very popular, that the middle generation is absent, and for some reason, either psychologically or physically, and the son-in-law and daughter-in-law chooses not to authorize the grandparents through the gate. I don't need to complicate this with all sorts of graphs and charts, but the point I want to make is, I think everybody who identifies themselves as an alienated grandparent shares lack of access. That gate is closed, but the reason that gate is closed could be very, very different. All right? And the way that I came up with those various scenarios was in reading the questions that were submitted to me. I think you know that the people who organized this meeting invited you to submit questions to me. And in reading the questions, I started to get a sense that, gee, there's really different types of alienated grandparents. You're a large group, and within that there are subgroups. So people, in the questions they asked, reflected, to me, different scenarios. So somebody's asking, my ex-spouse is a narcissist and won't allow contact with me with my grandkids. So that's somebody who's alienated from their own kid because of their spouse, and that's the gatekeeper. Somebody else says, my daughter has 2 lovely sons, is very well off, and will not let me see them. So maybe there's some estrangement there, we don't really know. My son is married to a narcissist, so that's the son-in-law, daughter-in-law problem. My son has told me countless times not to send gifts. Again, we can't know from that piece of information alone what happened in that relationship. But we can see there's many people who can close the gate between you and your grandchildren. Okay, so what you share, from what I understand, is this idea of ambiguous loss, which I think Pauline Voss probably coined the term, although I'm not sure, in which there's a physical absence. You don't have access to the physical lives of your grandchildren, but they're psychologically present in your heart and mind. And so you're in this state of yearning, of unrequited love, right? Where you want to touch and feel and be with these delicious, wonderful beings who are very, very, very much present in your heart and mind. And yet, there's that gate, and you're on opposite sides of the gate. So, what I'm going to say next is true of targeted parents as well as grandparents, that there's no closure, right? Because your grandchildren are alive, and there's always, as long as there's life, there's hope, right? But what that means is that you don't have closure. You don't have well, I have to accept this, and this is it, and it's never going to change. Every day, there's the maybe today, maybe things will get better, and that puts you in a state of unresolved grief. I don't think I'm telling there's the persistent yearning for the loved one. There's the feeling of shock and numbing when that yearning is not satisfied. And there can be a subsequent loss of meaning. When you're in a state of constant activation of unrequited love, it can cast a pall on everything else going on in your life, no matter how wonderful it is. And I obviously understand that that's a major challenge for targeted parents and for alienated grandparents, is how to find and make meaning in spite of the alienation that you're experiencing. I just wanted some visual to capture that sense of love and loss. Okay, and then here's Shakespeare. Grief fills the room up of my absent child, lies in his bed, walks up and down with me. And I know there's a lot of ways to talk about alienation or just grief, and this one just moves me because it's just this idea of this partner in your life, this grief, this presence that is with you. You know, you can't, it's very hard to turn away from it. It's always walking up and down. So, that's the depressing part. Okay, so I really thought that my job today was not to tell you what alienation is, but to tell you some ideas about how to live with it, how to move on, how to move forward. So just to reiterate, unlike death, the loved ones are still alive. And so there's always the possibility hanging tantalizingly there that there could be some kind of reparation. And I see that as a blessing and a curse. I mean, obviously it's a curse because it's so painful to be in this state of activated yearning and not being satisfied. But it's a blessing because perhaps there's some way to repair. Okay, so now we're going to kind of dig down a little bit. So for scenario A, where you're a parent of an adult child who's alienated from his own kids or her own kids, the hope is that the middle generation will repair his or her relationship with his or her children and be reinstated as a gatekeeper. So if you have a son who married a narcissistic woman who doesn't allow him to have a relationship with his kids, and then his kids grow up, or he gets a reunification therapist that helps, or a myriad of ways in which targeted parents can reconnect with their alienated kids, it not only reduces your pain of watching your child suffer, your adult child suffer, but it elevates that person back to being a gatekeeper. And I have lots and lots of ideas about how to help that middle generation repair their relationship. Okay? Scenario B, that's where the grandparent, you are alienated from your middle generation children. There's the possibility, I'm not going to tell you it's high or low because nobody knows. We have no idea what the numbers are, but I see it every day in my coaching practice that people of your generation repair relationships with their adult children. Okay, so that would be the pathway to open that gate, is you've got to fix the relationship with your adult children. Okay, then there's moving down the scenarios. The grandparent can try to repair the relationship with the son-in-law and daughter-in-law, who would then authorize the gate to be open. Or if the alienation is due to, in this case we would call it estrangement, if the breach is due to some problem that you've introduced into the relationship, you can always try to repair the relationship, take owner of that, and repair the relationship, and then the gate would open that way. And then, of course, the final source of hope, although it involves waiting, is that your grandkids would become old enough to reach out to you on their own. So, does anybody know of situations where that's actually happened? You do. The kids get to be 18 or whatever, maybe they're sneaking around, they're 15 and they start texting or contacting you. So that's another way in which, and sort of the kids are jumping over the gate to keep the gate metaphor, right? Saying, who needs a gate? I want to see my grandparents. Okay, so now I'm going to just keep drilling down. So scenario A, your job is to help the middle generation repair their relationship with their own children. Okay, That's your job as a grandparent. And that means, to some extent, letting go of your intense desire for your grandchildren and focusing on your adult child who's suffering and needs help. The other scenarios involves repairing the broken relationship with the middle generation yourself. Okay, so in A, you're helping your adult child fix the relationship with their kids. In the other scenarios, you're trying to fix the relationship with the middle generation. Does that make sense? So there's two very different ways to go about trying to open that gate. Okay. With scenario A, if the grandchildren are under 18 years of age, that means if you have an adult child who's a targeted parent who's lost a relationship with his kids or her kids, and those kids are under 18, your job is to support the middle generation, okay? And I'm going to talk about what that means. And then I'm going to talk about if they're over 18, and then I'm going to talk about the other scenarios. And I hope this isn't too confusing. This is the first time I've given this talk this way. Okay, so the most important thing, if you are a grandparent who has a relationship with your son and daughter who's alienated from their own kids, you want to help your adult child use effective parenting strategies to avoid entrenching the alienation. You want to help that child strengthen the bond with your child. And I know this sounds glib, like, oh yeah, sure. There's a lot that targeted parents can do. Okay, and there is a book called Co-Parenting with the Toxic Ex, which takes the 5 primary types of parental alienation strategies, and it teaches targeted parents, which would be for children if you're in this scenario. When your kid says X, don't do this, do this. It's very, very specific. Because what happens, once the alienation dynamic gets set in motion, what happens is the targeted parent is constantly put in a position of doing things that make the alienation worse. It's so unfair, but that's just the reality. So if the kid comes to the targeted parent and says, you stole my college money, which happens all the time, even when kids are so young, they don't know what college is, and they don't even know what money is. They're all righteously indignant, right? And the typical targeted parent will race upstairs and get the bank statement and race downstairs and wave it in front of the kid's face and say, I didn't steal your college money. Who told you that? Why did your mother tell you that I stole your college money? I see some smiles. I have to tell you, if there's 100 targeted parents in the room, 90 of them have had this experience. It's very common. Unfortunately, and actually I will stop and ask if I'm giving a talk to targeted parents, did it work? And everybody shakes their head no. It does not work. Okay, because you're missing the fundamental problem that's being presented. The targeted parent is misunderstanding what the child is saying. The child is not asking, did you steal my money? They don't care about money. Do you know any kids who care about money? No, they don't care. They just trust the parents are going to take care of it, right? What the child is saying is, don't you love me? And if you understand that that's what your child is saying, you would answer in a very, very different way. But targeted parents think that their job is to correct the misperception. Mom told child, I stole money, I didn't steal the money, I have to correct my child. I did not steal your money. And I guarantee you, all the kid is going to think is, wow, dad's really cranky. Or mom's really emotional. They're not going to think, oh, well, thanks for showing me the bank statement because I see you've allocated the interest rate. No, they don't care about that. They care about don't you love them. The targeted parents are continually misunderstanding what's going on in front of them. And then they're making mistakes, being too angry, too defensive, too passive, all totally common mistakes. And if you weren't a targeted parent, you could totally get away with it. But you can't if you're a targeted parent because your kid is being primed to misinterpret what you're saying and to assume that you don't love them. And then when you react, when the targeted parent reacts with anger or frustration, they're confirming that they don't love the child. So So this is all a very long-winded way of saying that your job is to help your middle generation adult child who's alienated from his or her own children learn how to deal with their kid. It's not going to change the other parent, but it's going to change their relationship with their kid so if they can get visitation back, then they're going to open the gate to you. Does that kind of make sense? So there's a lot here, and when I give targeted parent talks, I go on for hours and hours about here are the mistakes and here's the corrections, and I'm not going to have lots of time for that today, but I want to sort of open a door for you to understand that there's a lot of things targeted parents can do, and oftentimes they get very, very defeated. Oh, she's a narcissist, there's nothing I can do. He's a sociopath, it's pointless. And they kind of, and in a way you can sort of see that nothing they've done has worked yet. So of course they're going to come from a place of feeling very hopeless. So your job is to kind of support them, encourage them to get coaching or advice or read my books or figure out how to strategically respond to an alienated kid. Because there's a million things you can do wrong, but there are things that you can do right. Okay? And what a gift that would be to your grandchildren, to your, not only your grandchildren, but your own adult children, to help them see that they're not as helpless and hopeless as they probably are feeling. Okay. Your job as an alienated grandparent, if you're in scenario A, is also to help your adult child with their legal strategy. So alienation is the perfect intersection of legal and mental health problems, right? These cases are frequent flyer, they're in and out of court all the time. The alienating parents don't follow court orders, they're never sanctioned, they get away with murder, right? The judges don't get it, you got an attorney who's not really helpful. So there's lots and lots of legal issues that your adult children, if they are alienated, need help with. They need a parental alienation savvy attorney. If your attorney doesn't get alienation, if your adult child's attorney doesn't get alienation, fire them. Period, paragraph, in my opinion. Okay? You have to understand what Mike Bone calls the points of slippage. Those are the places in an alienation case where it's likely to slip out of control. Okay? And you need an attorney who understands them to prevent those points of slippage from occurring. Your adult child, if he or she is alienated, is going to need an attorney who has a strong narrative of the case. Okay? They have to have a theory of the case to present to the judge, because judges are lazy cowards, okay? And they don't want to do anything other than maintain the status quo, okay? If they could marry the status quo, they would. They're very risk averse, they're very afraid. Oh, the kid will run away if I make them visit their dad. So we have to really have an attorney who really understands how to compel that judge to do something, okay? And part of that is making the case for the judge to intervene on behalf of these grandchildren and on behalf of your adult child who's alienated from his or her children. Okay? So that's your job, should you choose to accept it, as a grandparent of children who are under 18 who are alienated from their parent who's your child. Everybody with me? Okay. Sound like fun? No. But I don't know what I'm just telling you like I see it. You know what I'm saying? Like if you really want to get your grandkids back, you've got to help your adult child get that relationship back with their kids. I don't see any other way other than just waiting around for the grandkids to figure it out, which may happen. You know, but if you have time and money and intelligence, this is where you want to put it. You want to give your adult child who's alienated from his kids the resources, the tools, encouragement to fix that relationship. Okay, so what do you do if you're a grandparent and your adult child is alienated from his kids who are over 18? So then you're out of the legal system's done, right? No court's going to make a 25-year-old visit their parent. You're 18, you're out of that. All right? So then your job is to help your adult child repair the relationship with their adult child. And I think I'll talk about some of this now, but it's going to come back also in some of the later scenarios as related to you as the alienated parent. But your job in this case is still the same thing, to help the middle generation repair the relationship. So how do they do that? Right? They have to heal the psychic wound. I'm going to say this like a million times. Inside every alienated child, whether they're 2, or 10, or 20, or 50, is a child who feels rejected. This is the light bulb moment, right? Because parents who are alienated from their kids feel that they are being rejected, right? I want to visit my kid, they won't see me, right? So you feel like I'm the rejected party. But I'm here to tell you, that's not the whole story. Okay? The whole story is that that child feels rejected. That's how alienation works. When one parent is able to convince the child that the other parent doesn't love him, and then the child is angry and hurt and acts out, and the targeted parent, if they haven't gotten enough coaching and advice and they're not alienation savvy, are going to make mistakes and behave in a way that confirms for the child that that parent doesn't love them. And waving a piece of paper in their face and yelling at them about how they didn't steal their college money is just part of it. It's every single day, unfortunately, targeted parents make mistakes. So the middle generation has an adult child who's alienated. They have to figure out what the psychic wound is. Why does my child feel that I don't love them? And you cannot stop with, well, so-and-so told him. Okay, because that's not enough. Then you're just foisting off the whole problem onto somebody else. And, you know, here's the news flash. You only have control over one person in your life. And that's you. So, in a way, it's not the worst thing in the world to say, gee, did I do anything that contributed to this problem, even if it's a tiny little bit, because then there's something I can do to fix it. And here's the other news flash. All parents are imperfect. Because we're human beings. And all humans are imperfect. So I guarantee you, every single parent who ever lived did something that hurt their child's feelings. All right, so now I have to pause for it. Hopefully you'll find this to be an amusing anecdote. So I gave this talk, this part of this talk somewhere else, and there were hundreds of targeted parents in the room, and I did my usual, raise your hand if you're a perfect parent, and everybody laughs. And my father happened to be in the room that night, and he raised his hand. And I said, other than the delusional man in the back, the rest of us, mere mortals, know that we're not perfect, right? And so healing the psychic wound involves trying to understand what happened from the child's point of view. This is radical. It's a very different way to think about it. And if you have an adult child who is a targeted parent, who doesn't have contact with his kids, or doesn't have a lot of power in that relationship, he's probably, or she, is very much feeling like the victim. My ex turned the kids against me, and now I don't get to have a relationship with them. That's his story. And I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying it's not going to help repair the relationship if he's looking at it from his point of view. Okay. And I'm going to come back to this when I talk about you healing your relationships, and I'm just going to move on for right now. So part of healing the psychic wound has to be forgiving your child, or the targeted parent forgiving the alienated child. And alienated children behave really, really, really badly. And one of the things that I say is that alienation is when one parent gives the child permission to break the other parent's heart, right? It's a terrible thing for a child to become alienated. And targeted parents walk around with a lot of anger and frustration and hurt and humiliation, rage perhaps. There's a lot of very strong negative feelings directed hopefully towards the alienating parent, sometimes it trickles down to the kid. Because these kids are entitled, they're arrogant, they're nasty, they're not behaving very well. They're ungrateful, they're rude, they're behaving in a way that a normal person would react and feel like this person is hurting them and I don't like the way you're behaving. But if you're stuck at that place of, I don't like how my alienated kid treated me, or if your adult child who's a targeted parent is stuck, and that's the main story that they're telling in their head about what happened, then they haven't forgiven the child. And they can't heal the psychic wound until they forgive the child. And the only way that I shouldn't say the only way, one way that I help people when I'm doing my coaching, and I feel that we're at, this is the nub of the problem, I just have them read my book, Adult Children and Parental Alienation Syndrome. Because you cannot read that book without understanding how victimized an alienated child is, whether you're 2 or 10 or 20 or 50. And one of the other things that I say, and maybe this is a helpful way to think about it, is alienated children are victims masquerading as perpetrators. So they are abusive in their behavior, but that's the presentation. Inside every alienated child is a child who wants a relationship with both parents. And so you have to really understand that. That's part of the process. You have to forgive the child, and then there's steps that you take to heal the wound. And I'm going to get back to that in a little bit later. So the main resource that I think is helpful if you're in scenario A is reading Adult Children of Parental Alienation Syndrome and a book called Surviving Parental Alienation, because there's actual steps in there about how to heal the psychic wound. And I'm going to give them to you, assuming I have time. Okay. Just going to check where I am. So if you don't have a relationship with your adult child, who's the parent of your grandparents, then you're in scenarios B, C, D, and E. A is different. A is you have a relationship, but that person doesn't have a relationship with their kids. All the other scenarios, the blockage is between the grandparent and the middle generation. If you're in that boat, that very, very unfortunate place to be, the most important thing is not to treat the middle generation like a gatekeeper, because it's obnoxious and offensive to them, most likely. And when I've done coaching with people in that situation, I have to get them to really think about repairing the relationship with their child. And then maybe they'll get to the grandkids. But if your adult child thinks you only want a relationship with them so you can get to their children, I think they're going to be pretty hurt. And that's not going to heal the psychic wound. You're not going to get anywhere if you treat them like they're just this person who produced your grandchildren. Because they're people in their own right, and they have a right to be treated with dignity and respect. So again, you have to figure out what's going wrong in this relationship. And if I can fix this, then maybe I'm going to get to my grandkids. But you cannot treat them, this is just me. I'm not telling you, I'm not like God telling you should. I'm just telling you my opinion. You're not going to get anywhere if you treat that middle generation like a means to an end. Even if they hurt you and frustrated you, and you don't particularly like your son-in-law or daughter-in-law, they're not your cup of tea, they're not just a baby-making machine for you to have grandchildren. They are people. And they're going to, I believe that they will feel in their heart whether your heart is open to them or not. Anybody strongly disagree with anything I said so far? Disagree a little? Have a question? First.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, it seems to me that when my daughter had a baby, it was just as important to her to continue being my child as grandchild or mother.
Beautiful.
Another child.
Right. The minute you or the middle generation has a baby doesn't mean that they're not your children still. They still want to be treated. You're still their mom or dad. And if you are 100% focused on the grandbabies, you're going to hurt their feelings.
But is it possible for for your daughter to be very jealous of the attention that you're giving the baby, if she's kind of been a jealous kid right along?
Heal the psychic wound. So that's her psychic wound. My mom loves my baby more than me. And I think you have to figure out a way to reassure her that that's not true. Whether it's taking her out for special times, paying for somebody else to babysit while you just spend time with her. I mean, you have to truly value your children. I'm not saying do it just to get to the grandkids, but what is it in your daughter that's leading her to feel that way? She might be, biologically predisposed to feel anxious. It might be something in your relationship. You have to, I think, talk to her about it and reassure her. Because otherwise you're kind of headed to she's going to close that gate. And then you're losing two relationships, right? With your daughter and the babies.
But it always seemed when she was growing up that I could not give her enough attention. She was just one of those kids that didn't want to occupy herself. She just constantly wanted my attention.
Some kids are draining, and there's no question about it. But also, I don't want to go too deep into any one case, because I don't know for sure, but kids are very attuned to rejection. So if you have a kid who's got a high need level, and then maybe as a parent you can be like, enough already, and then the kid senses that and it heightens their need, and you're like, no, I just need a second. And it's like the kid's clinging to your leg, and you're just like, let me just, right? And you can sort of have a spiral of sort of dissatisfaction with the child. So, if your child is still a child, the solution would be, this is what the experts say, a certain number of minutes every day that you devote to your child without checking mail, without looking at your phone, without answering calls, and it's undivided, non-directive attention. You don't say, we're going to play this game and here are the rules, and it's just whatever you want. You want to play puppets, you want to take a walk, I'm yours. And if you give kids enough of that every day, it really helps. You're filling the bucket rather than putting it reluctantly and with little drops. And the kid's always thirsty rather than here's a cup and I'm going to sit with you and I'm really going to help you feel full and satisfied.
So if they're now 38 years old and they're professionals and they have their own family and there's a 3-hour time difference talking with them on the phone, how are you going to fill that bucket at this age and stage of
I
life?
think that's a great question, and I have ideas, and I'm going to just not answer right away because I don't want to have too much attention on one situation, but I think there are ways to do it. I mean, she could be an extreme case where there's like nothing you do, but if she's letting you know that she's dissatisfied, that means she cares. And so, I don't need to jump around too much, but one of the things that I tell targeted parents is anytime your kid criticizes you, there's only 2 words. The first 2 words out of your mouth should be thank you. I'm so glad you're telling me what's bothering you. So if your daughter is telling you, whatever she's telling you, you can say, I think I hear you saying you're not having enough attention, or I'm not giving you attention in the right way. I'd like to fix that. You are so lucky that she's letting you know what the problem is. Okay? So that was a good example, and I think you had a question, Kim.
I've had the misfortune of being in scenario A and then magically placed in the others. So
So the targeted parent who was your child,
my daughter,
you were alienated from your daughter,
I am now.
and then,
We were her biggest cheerleader. She's been in and out of court for my granddaughter this whole 12 years.
so she became, right, so you had a good,
Good relationship. Always
it's a
had a
little
great
complicated.
relationship with my daughter. My granddaughter came along. She's the world. We supported my daughter and granddaughter through every court system, everything. And then all of a sudden, a year ago, she stopped talking to me. Period. Won't tell me what's wrong.
I'm definitely gonna get to that, because I feel like I've heard that over and over again. All of a sudden, bam, that gate comes down, and I'm definitely gonna talk about that. Okay. every alienated and estranged child, and any child who's rejecting you, and by child I mean somebody who you had a parenting relationship with, is a child who feels rejected. Right? So the essence of alienation is that somehow your child has become convinced that you are unsafe, unloving, and unavailable, and is hurt and angry with you. That's your child's perspective. It may be right, it may be wrong, it's your child's story. Or I should say it's an alienated child's story. So, same thing, you have to understand the estrangement or alienation from the child's point of view. You have to get over the idea that you did nothing wrong. It's not a helpful place to be. You have to come at it with what I call compassionate curiosity. What is going on for you? What is this like for you? And you have to be open, truly open. This is not easy, to invite criticism and to hear, whether you agree or not. It could be the most nonsense story with no reality to it from your point of view, but that's your child's perspective, or the child's perspective. Okay, and I want to talk about the letter, but I know that I'm going to get to that. Okay, here it is. And actually, the truth is, I'm definitely going to end plenty early, and then I'll have time to take questions. So the letter is part of my coaching, and I'm just going to impart it to you now. To heal the breach, whether it's between you and your adult child, between you and your son or daughter-in-law, between your adult child and his adult children, you can just sort of see that there's many permutations to this. But I also want to say that a lot of people have told me, oh, I wrote the letter, and then they send it to me, and I'm like, no, I can see why this did not work. So there's definitely a lot of finesse to it, and I'm going to try to talk through it. But you can't write the letter until you've opened your heart and forgiven your child, or son-in-law, or daughter-in-law, whoever it is, okay? It will not work. They will know. It will leak out in your letter that you're actually resentful and ticked off, or worse, okay? So that's, you have to start from a place of forgiveness. It's not easy. Okay? So when I coach people to write the letter, and I want to say, I'm not bragging, and I don't keep statistics, so I don't know for sure, but I've had tremendous success. Not 100%, but a lot of success, for what that's worth. Okay, so you have to start by acknowledging the breach. You have to say, I've been thinking about our relationship. I've been thinking about the tough spot that we're in, that we haven't really been close in a long time. It's been many years, or whatever it is, months, weeks, years, since we've really been close. And I'm really thinking about that, okay? You can't deny the reality. You want to get their attention right away. Like, oh, this person's speaking truth, right? You're not afraid to speak the truth. There's a breach in our relationship. And you want to express desire for improvement. I want nothing more than to heal the breach between us. I so want to fix this. Okay? So far the language is neutral, right? There's no blaming, there's no shaming. You need to see this from your child's perspective. And I sort of missed a step, which is you have to do a lot of work before you can write the letter. Okay? But I'm going to tell you what that work is. So the next thing is you have to show empathy. You seem very hurt and angry the last time we were together, or over the last several years. I sense a lot of hurt and anger coming from you, and I want you to know that I see that. Okay, so you're acknowledging the pain that your child is feeling. And then you have to wonder. I'm wondering what is going on. But that is not enough. If you stop there, I'm pretty sure you would get nowhere. Because what everybody wants, humans, targeted, alienated, nothing, human beings, we want to be understood. We want the other person to understand us, right? Isn't that what gift giving is? You don't give somebody $20 to buy something. No, the person wants to know that you know them and put the thought in and cared enough to make the effort, right? That's what the gift is. It's not just the thing. It's everything that went into the thing. Does that make sense? You wouldn't be happy if your partner gave you a $20 bill and said, Is that, oh, you knew, you remembered when I was in that store and I liked that thing and you went back and got it. Okay, so that's what this is. This is your gift to your child, or the middle generation, to wonder what it is. So this is where I have to scratch my head a little bit when people say to me, it just happened one day, and I have no idea. And I think, you gotta do a little better if you can. Something happened somewhere along the line. Something. It's hard for me to believe. I'm not saying it couldn't ever happen, but it can't happen to everybody. That all of a sudden, for absolutely no reason, a relationship ended. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with the reason or think that it has enough weight, but something was going on in the relationship. And so when I do the coaching and I guide the person through the story, usually I get a whiff of what it is. And I'm not saying that it's one thing, but usually I can sort of get a feel, whether it's mom got married 2 weeks after divorcing dad and the kids bent out of shape because somebody new moved into the home, or mom moved to another state because she got a job and she went to court and she tried to get the kid to come, but the court said no, but she moved anyway. How could this kid not be upset that mom moved away? Right? Doesn't mean that she didn't, there was nothing else she could do. That's her story. The child's story is, mommy wasn't here when I wanted her. Right? So it's really thinking about it from the child's point of view. Somebody told me a story, father, I don't remember all the details, but he showed up. His daughter showed up. There was a lot of conflict between them. And she showed up at his door one night and it was raining. And she asked him some question and he didn't answer it and closed the door, and that was it. That was the end of that relationship for a long time. And he started by saying, I don't know what happened. She just stopped. I'm like, let's see. Let's go through. Tell me when things started to fall apart. Because in general, we can set aside our ego and our sense of right and wrong and a sense of being victimized, because all parents are imperfect. Right? If you can say that, if you can remember that, then you let yourself off the hook. And you can understand that alienation happens when somebody else takes your normal imperfections that normally would not cause somebody to reject you. But because it's alienation, they're convincing your child that you deserve to be rejected. But from your child's point of view, that event actually happened. Maybe you were too tough or too easy or too this or too that. I mean, like I said, we're all humans, we're all imperfect. So this part of the letter is where you have to do a lot of work. It's not easy, but you have to wonder with a lot of specificity. But I use the word wonder because it's very respectful. You're not telling your child, I know what you're feeling, I know what you went through, I know why you're so bent out of shape. No, it's, I wonder if that night you showed up and it was raining and you were crying and you asked me, did I have an affair? And I didn't answer you. I wonder if you felt abandoned, loved. What was it? What were you feeling? Well, it's very powerful to write this letter. Both for, a lot of people have written it and they haven't necessarily gotten the response they want, but they say that it's a very helpful way. It's a part of the alienation healing journey for them, and then a lot of times it actually works. So then the next part of the letter is inviting whoever the alienated child is. Here I just wrote MG for middle generation, whether it's yours or son-in-laws or them with their own kids, all those permutations. Whoever the letter is being written to share his or her perspective. It's an invitation. That's what the letter is. I think I have a sense, I'm wondering if it's this. I'd like to understand what happened from your point of view. What did this feel like for you? And not only do you have to say them, but you have to promise them that you're not going to butt in. And you have to say, I promise you, I'm not going to tell you my perspective. problem is to have a debate. You just think X, and it wasn't X, it was Y. And that goes nowhere. This is not a debate. This is about feelings. It's not about facts. All right? Your kid doesn't want to hear all the things that you think are wrong with his perception. Okay? That doesn't work for healing the relationship. That can come later. But in my experience, once the breach is healed, the targeted parent lets go of the idea, oh, so my kid thought 10 years ago that I stole his college money. He knows I'm a good guy. We don't have to have that conversation. It's amazing how quickly you let go of the idea of having all the facts known once you have the relationship back. Okay. So you invite the child to share his or her perspective, not a debate, and yet you give the options. You could do it on the phone. You could do it for coffee. You could Skype. You could do this. You could do that. We could do it with a neutral third party of your choosing. Otherwise, the child will think you're going to ambush them, right? Then you want to normalize the process. Sometimes parents and their adult children have conflict. But usually they can work it out in a way that feels right for everybody. So you're demonstrating mutuality. You're not there to cram your version of reality onto them, right? And you're normalizing it, meaning this is not a catastrophe, we're 1 in a billion, fix it. This is fixable, right? You need to show them, we can work this out. And then the next part works if whoever's writing the letter was a parent of the person you're writing a letter to. So if you're writing a letter to your kids, if you're alienated from your kids, or it's your adult children writing a letter to their adult children, you want to include a photograph of the alienated child when they were a child, looking really happy. Beautiful, delicious 6-year-old girl with the sun shining in her hair, and just the boy with the baseball hat. Just a really lovely picture. And then you tell the kid, who's ever writing the letter, it's the kid, found this photograph, and you say something beautiful about the child. You were such a nature-loving child, or you were so enthusiastic, I loved how the sun sparkled in your hair. Something very poignant. And you tell your child, I put this picture on my refrigerator, and every time I go into the kitchen, I smile. Every time whoever's getting this letter goes into their kitchen, they're going to think of you going into their kitchen, smiling about them. All right, so you've just planted a whole new memory. Okay. So speaking of memory, the next thing you're going to do in the letter is spark a sense of memory. I know that sounds crazy, right? It sounds so clinical. Spark a sense of memory. So what you want to do is think back to a good experience that you had with whoever's writing the letter, had with whoever the letter's written to. A good experience from that child's childhood that has to do with a positive smell. Again, bear with me, I know it sounds crazy. And then you're going to write about it. So you could say, and this has to be true, so you have to think of something that's actually true. So you could say, I was walking on the beach the other day, good example popped into my head, and I smelled the salty, briny air, and I found a beautiful pebble, and I thought of how much you love to collect pebbles, and I put this pebble that I found, and you were such a curious, lovely child. So it's a little story that has something to do with the smell. An example that somebody used that I worked with had to do with baking lasagna. Actually, it was grandma's recipe. So a parent was saying, I made grandma's lasagna recipe the other day, and the house filled with the smell of garlic and roasted tomatoes, and I remembered how you used to love to layer the cheese. All right? I know this might be part of the brain that stores memories is very, very close to the part of the brain that stores smells. All right? So when you're attaching a smell, you're activating the child's sense memory of you in a positive way. So it has to be a good smell and a good memory and something true. You can't say, oh, I was walking by the beach when you weren't. So you have to really have the experience, okay? Whether it's going into a bakery that you went in with your child every Friday afternoon after school and smelling the chocolate chip, whatever it is, it has to be a true memory that relates to a smell. And in case you think I'm crazy, which I know you don't, but you can just think back to Marcel Proust, right? And the first 45 pages of Remembrance of Things Past is his childhood memories that are sparked by eating, anybody know the name of the cookie? Madeline's, that's right. 45 pages, one bite, 45 pages. So that's your job, okay? And then you want to end the letter with an expression of undying love and care. My heart is open, my door is open, my arms are open. I want to fix this between us. I'm sorry for your pain. Okay? This is the, if there's any magic, this is it. This is the only thing I have ever found that brings the alienated person to the place where they're ready to have the alienated, targeted parent back in their life. Like the letter takes work. And it's not, like I said, it's not 100%. There are circumstances sometimes. You know, to me, the most challenging cases are somebody calls me and they say, you know, my kid is 30 or 40 and I haven't had a relationship in, you know, a long time. And they live with, you know, my former spouse bought a compound and all of my children and their children live together in a big property and everybody, you know, I'm like, and they work, you know, when the alienated person works with, you know, their job is managing the company and the alienating parents, there's certain just logistical things in terms of dependency and geography that make it harder for an alienated kid to come around. Does that make sense? I mean, if you're alive, if you're working in the alienating parent's business and you're, you know, you're just totally, your lives are so enmeshed that it's hard to even imagine angering that person because everything is hinged on it. Your house, you know, it's going to be tough. I don't think it means it can't be done, but I like the cases with, you know, the other parent is sort of, for whatever reason, out of the picture. And I think that person, that's low-hanging fruit. They're ready to reestablish a relationship with the other parent. Any other comments about this? Mm-hmm.
In all these cases here, you're talking about, it sounds like the parent and the child has communications along the way somewhere. In the case where you've had no communication for 7 years with two children who walked out of your life the same day, who you know if you write a letter to them, you know where it's going in the garbage.
Right. I'm going to stop you there. How old are the children?
33 and 40.
So this is what I know from talking to people who are adults who lived this as kids. You do not know the value. You as the targeted parent cannot devalue your effort. If you start from the place of the letter's going to end up in the garbage, then you're not doing anything. And then you're actually, truthfully, showing yourself to not be interested in having a relationship. So you're inadvertently reinforcing the idea that you don't care. You have to make the effort and just know that you're putting it out in the universe. And this is, think about it this way. If you do reconcile one day and your kid says, how come you never texted me? How come you never wrote me letters? You can honestly say, if you've been doing it, I did. And that will have meaning. But, well, I was pretty sure your mom would throw the letters out. That's not as compelling. That's not as caring as it could be. And I don't mean to get down to you. I totally understand how demoralizing it is. How hard it is to send that text when you just feel like it's going to be deleted. But I'm a firm believer, and I know this from alienated kids who reunify. They say things like, you know those emails you sent me that I never responded to? I read every one. Okay? Or the kid who found the letters in the glove, what do they call it? The glove compartment that the other parent had been sending to them, that the alienating parent had just been shoving in the glove compartment. If you say to yourself, I know that my efforts will have no meaning, you're not open to the possibility that they could have been. All right, and just to go a little further, if you send an email and the header says, "Love from your father," it doesn't matter if they read the email or not. Every week, if you send them that email, they're getting a little seed being planted in their brain. Gee, Dad must care. Every week he sends me. What a pain, right? But inside, you know what that kid's saying? He still cares. All right? I know that's it. I hope I wasn't too hard on you. But I really believe you have to believe that what you're doing has meaning. You just can't see, you know, the metaphor. One of the many metaphors that I use is when you plant, you know, a seed in a garden and you water it, you know, every week you go and water it, and all you see is dirt. You have no idea what's going on underneath the surface, right? But you do it. Why do we do it? It's an act of faith. It has meaning. And now I'm gonna tell you another story to hopefully inspire you. Okay? So this is a true story. So there was a dad who had visitation every Sunday, and every Sunday he'd go to his kid's house. It was a long walk to get up to the front door, and every Sunday he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna see my kids." And one Sunday, the mom comes out, "No, you're not gonna see your kids this weekend." And he sort of slinks away. He's really defeated. It's very disappointing. And the next Sunday he comes, and eventually he just never, that door is closed. It never opens. Sometimes there's a little note on the door, "Go away, mailman." They don't even acknowledge that he's the father, right? And sometimes he can hear the kids on the other side of the door snickering, "Oh, what a buffoon, what an idiot." And so I interviewed this girl when she grew up. All right, so she's the one who told me the story. And she said to me, one day my father stopped coming. And of course he didn't get coaching, he didn't know, right? It's demoralizing. And I said, what did you think when he stopped coming? I mean, you told him not to come week in and week out. What did you think? And she said, "I was shocked." And the point is, the knock had meaning to her. For her, that was everything. It was the difference between my father loves me and my father doesn't love me. From the dad's point of view, the knock was a failure. All I got to do was go up to the door and knock on the door, and then I went away and I got nothing. No. He got to give a message to his daughter, "I love you and I'm here." So it's really about seeing it from the child's point of view. Does that make sense? Okay, so I guess I wanted to end with living with alienation, okay, because that's kind of where you're at. And so the first idea, and this is more for people who have children under 18, so it would be you helping your adult child who's an alienated parent think about it this way. This is a battle. More importantly, it's war, right? Alienation is ugly. It's exhausting. Brian Lesmer says it's a marathon and a sprint. It's long-term and intensive at the same time, especially if you're in and out of court. It's the biggest, drain and shaming and sad experience I can think a parent could go through. Because it's a battle, you have to have a battle plan, right? You have to conceptualize. And again, this one particular idea is more relevant for people who are dealing with court issues. But you could even, as a grandparent, you could say, "I've got a problem, and I want to fix this, and I need a plan. I need a plan of action. I need some ideas about what to do." You can't just kind of sit around and feel your pain, because that's not going to get you what you want fast enough, okay? And then there's all the other things that you know and hear all the time about trying to find a way to appreciate the good in your life, which is incredibly hard. Alienation is just this cloud that corrupts everything. Food doesn't taste as good, and movies aren't as funny, and sunsets aren't as beautiful, and the ocean isn't as magical. I know, it just sucks the pleasure out of your life to have this, this thing around your heart. But you only get one life as far as we know. I know I'm in a church, so maybe I shouldn't say that. But as far as we know, we only get one life as the people that we are. And you deserve good, even if all of this is not alienation and you hurt your kid and it's all of you. You still don't deserve this. Most kids forgive their parents for much worse than whatever anybody here in this room did. And you all deserve to have a better relationship with your kids and grandkids, and you all deserve to have pleasure. All right? And I think that is, you have to consciously work at it. Okay? It's not easy to get out of the bubble of alienation. You have to take care of yourself. You all know that stress is a major risk factor for health problems, right? So you have to really think about, and if you're depressed, it's harder to want to go to the doctor or take your vitamins or whatever. You obviously know about social support. I don't have to tell you about that, but if you are a parent of a targeted parent who's lost contact with his or her kids, you can encourage that person to get social support. You need to find a mental health professional who understands alienation if you don't fire them. Find serenity, you just leave that sort of ultimate goal. Develop a mantra. That means you need to have some ideas in your head, things to say to yourself that help you through the rough times, so that you can sort of fall back on some statements that help you manage the feelings that you have. Okay? And there's ideas about that in the book. And calling on a helpful image. One thing that I really recommend in terms of going back to the idea of forgiving your child is to think about your alienated child as a puppet or as a shining, innocent, beautiful baby needing love. There's all sorts of imagery that people can call on that can help them get back in touch with an image of their child, not as the abuser, but as a victim, as an innocent, loving person who wants love and needs love in their own right. And you have to find ways to validate your identity as a parent and grandparent. Somebody told me this story that she went to her son's 8th grade graduation, and at one point the principal said, "All parents stand up." And she didn't know whether to stand up or not. And I don't know, it's very poignant, right? And we have to stand up, right? We have to stand up and own our identities as parents and grandparents, even if we have alienation in our lives. Okay, so it's just the final parting words. It's through maintaining your identity as a parent and grandparent that you find the strength for your journey. And it is a journey, right? I said it's a sprint, it's a marathon, it's a battle, it's a journey. And I really think that the way to, going back to the idea of healing the psychic wound, it's through knowing that your children are still your children, no matter what. And they need you, even though they cannot tell you that they need you. And they may not know that they need you. You need to know that they need you. Every child wants to be loved by his or her parents. Inside every child is a child who wants to be loved, even if they are behaving otherwise. So, I want to wish you support and understanding from friends and family, courage to forge ahead, inner peace,